Welcome. In this lecture, we would focus on GATE questions for Psychology 2022 examination. Some of the questions were very direct, but a lot of questions from research and statistics. So cover those exclusively from the video tutorials that we have done. The detailed concepts have been explained in much simple way and much easier to understand with applicative content. So don't miss those for all means. The links for the video lectures are given below. Now proximo-distal direction is what? From it, if it is from head to foot, as you can see in the diagram, we call it as the cephalocaudal. From extremities to extremities, it is the proximo-distal. So we call it as a center periphery. So center periphery becomes the right option. So from hand to hand, leg to leg is the proximo-distal. Now behavior therapy includes three methods: systematic desensitization, counterconditioning and flooding. Systematic desensitization, where let's say a person is afraid of dog, you bring the dog closer to it, ask the person to put the hand, and then so on. Flooding, just push the person with the dog and see what happens. Okay, and counter conditioning. But countertransference is what is used in psychodynamic therapy. So a different approach that's used here. So C is the incorrect option. A, B and D are the correct ones. You are asked not, so C would be the answer here. Now who belongs to behaviorism? James was a functionalist focused on Darwin's concept. Freud was a psychoanalyst, we very well know. So we have covered this again in detail, the theories. Watson and Skinner were behaviorists. So A and C are the incorrect options here. The next is Bem's self-perception theory. This is pretty interesting. If you remember, we discussed this experiment. So Bem gave $20 for to a set of person for writing testimonial. The other group, he gave $1. Now interestingly, those who were given $1 performed better. Why? Because they were internally motivated. So Bem's theory of self-perception says that it's not about external rewards or external motivation, but it's about development of a self-concept, and it also suggests that people change their attitude because of their behavior. This theory is related to attitude formation, and behavior is always a source of knowledge. So all these four concepts are clear from the example that we have cited. A very interesting experiment that we have covered into detail. Internal state of a person, an experience of that internal state is the basic idea behind this. Now, this is again an applicative question. I know manual car driving. Now, I have recently got an automatic car. I have switched to that automatic car, but I still remember that manual commands of changing the gear. What kind of interference is it? This is proactive interference. Why? Because what I have learned old is interfering with my new knowledge. Now, let's say I had been driving a manual car. Now I know a automatic car, but I still want to switch back to the manual car, and I'm having trouble driving the manual car again. So that is where my new knowledge is disturbing my old knowledge, and therefore we would call that scenario as a retroactive interference. But here this would be a proactive interference because my old knowledge is interfering my new developments. Kohlberg's theory of moral development talks about moral judgment at various levels. So the morality is judged at which level? Morality is judged at the post-conventional level. If you look onto the diagram of Kohlberg's theory, the first two levels are the pre-conventional, followed by conventional, followed by post-conventional. And post-conventional is where you are emphasizing on development of consciousness and emphasis on individual rights. Now this question says the research design in which several age groups of the participants are studied at one point. That means I am talking about a set of people studying, let's say 20 people giving music exam, all of them from different age group, but at the same time. We call this as what? We call this as a cross-sectional design. However, the same person giving the exam today, 10 days later, 20 days later, I am seeing the growth pattern, how the person is learning music. So that would be a longitudinal study. However, the same person being studied, group of person being studied together at the same time is cross-sectional. So understand the difference very clearly. However, there is another word, cross-sequential. Cross-sequential is a combination of longitudinal as well as cross-sectional. So here we take a shorter span, let's say 10 years, 5 years, and we study different kinds of individual with different age groups and different cultural combinations. So we call it as a cross-sequential. The next is a very interesting question, a very direct question rather, coefficient of variation. So coefficient of variation is simply standard deviation divided by mean of difference multiplied by 100. So that is standard deviation is 5 divided by mean of difference 14 multiplied by 100. I solve this and I get the answer. Very, very simple question. The next is exploratory factor analysis. What is exploratory factor analysis? Again a very direct question. Factor analysis, what I try to do is I reduce my number of variables. So let's say if I have 100 variables in hand, I want to reduce those 100 variables to 10 variables. So I group those 10 variables in one heading. I take so much data and I club that data into different categories. So what I'm trying to do is I'm reducing the variables into fewer number of variables, and I'm investigating the things that I cannot measure directly. So definitely A is correct, C is correct, and then B says that we extract the maximum common variance from all the variables and put that into a common score. That's again correct. So A, B and C, all these three are the right options here. The next is Swami gets a score of 190, the mean is 150, the standard deviation is 25. Assume a normal distribution, what would be the z-score? So z-score would be what? It would be x minus the mean divided by standard deviation. So that's 190 minus 150 divided by 25, which is 40 divided by 25. If it was 50 by 25, it would be 2, but it is more than 1, less than 2. So only value between 1 and 2 is B. So B becomes my right answer, because 25 multiplied by 1 is 25, 25 multiplied by 2 is 50. Now my value has to be between 1 and 2 because my value is 40. Okay, so the answer would be 1.6, the only choice available. The last question is an interesting question. We have covered this extensively in our classes on research and statistics, so don't miss the video lectures that we have covered. The conceptual understanding you would get there in detail, but the overview for this question I'll give you here. So the idea is we are trying to find the work value relation with employee engagement. So this is a simple correlation that you can understand between values and engagement. The next is the work values have two groups. It is public and private. So it is a two group that I am studying for work values. Against this we have the t-test that can be done. So I have two groups to which I want to study. So two groups that I would study here, two independent groups. The next is F-test or one-way ANOVA. Why one-way ANOVA can be used? One-way ANOVA is used where I have, let's say I want to talk about employee engagement and engagement across the public and the private groups. Okay, so here I can use one-way ANOVA because I have one group and I want to see the impacts through public and private. So for one, I have two categories, you can say that. For one, I don't have the subcategories. For the other, I have the subcategories. However, if I was using chi-square, I need to have the categories for both of those, and both of those should be categorical variables. So that's one of the major differences where you would not use chi-square in this case. So here A, C and D would be the right option. Extremely important questions on the statistics. Be very, very particular. The topics like z-score, sampling distribution, central limit theory, testing of the hypothesis, p-value, inferential region, we have covered extensively in the section on the statistics, very, very thoroughly with simple simulations and statistical animations. So refer those. That would make the concept much simple and easier to understand, and you would develop a liking towards the subject. So don't be afraid of the section on the statistics. It's really scoring. You can get extremely good marks if you are good at statistics. Thanks for joining in.